All right. Good evening, Canby. Welcome to the Urban Renewal Agency special meeting for February 3rd, 2021. It is 6:19, and we are going to get the meeting started. The first item on the agenda is the call to order, which we've done, and second, we have citizen input and community announcements. So, Melissa, do we have anybody for citizen input and community announcements tonight?
Carol Palmer may be here to speak on the facade improvement program. I don't see her logged in right now, but she had signed up to speak for that. And we also have Mary Hanlon here to speak on the DDA.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll let them speak underneath those separate resolutions, and I think that would be better so that we can have the staff report prior to hearing anything that they have to say, unless there's any objection to that from the commission. All right, so moving on, I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, so it has been moved by Vice Chair Hodgson and seconded by Commissioner Bangs to approve the consent agenda, which consists of the meetings from the minutes from the January 20th, 2021 URA special meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 7-0. All right, so the first item under new business is URR 21-002, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency to ratify the facade improvement program approval process from an agency decision to an administrative approval. So we have our URA director, Scott, here to give us our staff report, and then we will open up for discussion after that.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Urban Renewal Commissioners. Yes, this is being brought to you this evening at your request from your last meeting that in order to expedite the facade grant program, this would allow the URA director, which is also the city administrator, myself, the ability to approve those at the administrative level. So I think this was generated from some recent timing approval issues where we didn't have an urban renewal meeting for several weeks, and there were some applicants that were ready to go. So that this was a request of the URA Commission specifically. So I'll leave it in your hands. But this, if you were to approve this resolution, it would grant my position the authority at the administrative level. I would say, if you do approve this, whether tonight or some other time, the intent certainly from staff would be that we would bring, even if we approved these grants, we would still bring back a full report to you at the next available meeting, as well as we would look to invite the grant recipients to attend and perhaps speak on their project. So if you go forward, we'll still have an opportunity to if you will, celebrate the grant process and the recipients. So with that, I'll leave it to you to decide if you're wanting to proceed with this evening.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And I know we did get some letters in our emails the last couple of days, so hopefully you guys have all had a chance to read through those. So this is now discussion time, and I know Commissioner Bangs, you had raised your hand, so go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to want to make a motion to table this resolution for 2 months, and I would explain why, but I think we need to have a second in order for me to do that.
We do. So do we have a second? Second from Councilor Parker. Okay, motion made. Commissioner Bangs, seconded by Commissioner Parker to table the discussion.
So we all received a letter today from Carol Palmer and some others, and I believe that the objections that she raised are good objections. I think they're valid. I think that preserving a potential historic district is a greater need. I reached out to Carol and told her I agreed with her that I would try to table this motion for a couple of months and see if we could work together to come up with a way to protect our historic buildings and yet also streamline this process. And she thought that would be something that we could work together on. And so at this point, I would urge the commission to delay for a period of 2 months to give us an opportunity to try and put in protections that she raised in her letter.
Yeah, thank you so much, Commissioner Bangs. I appreciate that. I know, that you had kind of been the one that had asked about this originally, and we got it on here. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate Carol's letter as well. I know that's something that we probably didn't think about when we first started talking about this. So, Joe, I do have one clarification. Do we need to, in the motion, do we need to set this for a date certain, or can we just table it until a future date to be announced at another time?
It doesn't have to be a date certain, but
Okay.
I would ask you, if you look at the actual parameters of the current facade program, you may not find the protections that she's asking for either. So I'm not sure if you're wanting Scott or I or both of us to go back to the table and even create something for you to consider in the meantime, because the whole thing is, you can direct your director to, if it's of historical importance, to always not streamline the process, but to either bring it to you or try to write some sort of parameters within the program itself to do what she's trying to effectuate. So it's just, if we have 2 months and we're not directed to do anything, it's going to be hard to know what to do.
Sure.
Thanks. Commissioner Spoon.
Thank you, Chair Barwig. I suppose tabling it's fine. I actually want to share a couple of concerns. My intention was to vote against the proposal, and I want to share a couple of reasons, because if they matter to anyone else, tabling it might not be an issue. The first is one that Carol started to bring up in her letter, which is that what this particular program does is a public grant direct to private industry. And in that case, I think having public comment is pretty important. And if we just make it an administrative action, it kind of excludes the public from that process. And because it's taking public money and granting it directly to private businesses, to me, making sure that public has an opportunity to comment is pretty important. The other concern I have is that every year during budget, we actually budget only a certain amount of money for this program. And in the event we had multiple people trying to access the program that would exceed the annual budget amount, a couple of things could happen. We could come back for a supplemental budget, but in the event there's not support for a supplemental budget, then we're putting city staff in the position to pick and choose between private businesses to give a grant to. And I really feel like the burden of that process should fall on us. And we shouldn't be putting city staff in the position to pick and choose between which businesses would get the grant and which ones wouldn't, based on a budget amount that we had set. So while I understand the desire to make it more efficient, and I certainly don't want to see future delays in authorizing it, those two concerns would lead me to think that it's probably best to leave it in the public view and not make it strictly administrative.
Okay. Any other discussion? Commissioner Hensley, sorry, your hand is kind of hiding in your background there.
I don't know how to change that thing. Anyway, I had my hand raised at the same time as Commissioner Spoon for almost verbatim the same reasons. And I would also like to, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but in our conversation, Chair Barwig, we brought up some good points about the Main Street Design Program, who actually takes a look at these things before we see them. And it's, to my knowledge, hasn't really changed a lot in its makeup lately. It's just not really an official committee like we have our citizen advisory boards for the council. And I would like to see the Main Street Design Committee become a permanent function as a citizen advisory board to the URA, and have it have terms just like our citizen advisory boards do, so we have some change out and have more participation in that process. I was going to be a no vote on this as well before the tabling motion came up.
Commissioner Bangs.
I think both of your points are valid. In particular, the concerns that were raised in Carol Palmer's letter regarding public input is legitimate. I told her that if she and I weren't satisfied that we could come up with a system that was both streamlined and provided public input and protected historical buildings, that I also would be a no vote on this resolution that I did ask the commission to consider. So I'm not ready to move forward without those protections either.
Okay, so the motion that has been made, if we want to change the motion, Commissioner Banks, that would have to be on you. You'd have to rescind the motion if we want to change the motion to denying the resolution. I think that we have the motion made and the second, so we need to vote on the table idea unless you want to adjust your motion.
I think I do not want to. On the other hand, I do believe that the other commissioners do have the right to amend the motion if they want to. But I still would rather postpone this and see if we can work out a system that might satisfy all of these interests before we just let it die.
Okay. Further discussion, Commissioner Spoon?
Something Commissioner Hensley said, I thought made me have another idea too that might help Carol without us making an administrative task. But perhaps one thing we could consider is, in addition to having this go through the Main Street review, we could send the facade improvement through the Historic Review Board and Commission and have them take a look at it as well. I mean, they exist for, to be advisors to us, and this might be a good use of them when there's a question of whether or not the building's historic or not, to have them review it. And that might help Carol, even though I still don't want it to be an administrative action. I think it still might be a good action in addition to the Main Street Board becoming permanent.
All right. Any further discussion? Vice Chair Hodson, I think you had started to raise your hand. Were you going to say something?
No, I think it's all been said. I mean, to me, I think we just got to make sure if we're going to table this conversation and want to figure out what we want to include the Historic Review Board on this facade improvement piece, we need to give staff direction on what it is that we want them to bring back to us in a couple of months. So I'm fine with tabling it. I mean, as it was, I was probably a no vote as well on this, but I mean, I'm willing to table and see how we can fold in some of the pieces that we've just talked about, or if there's specific direction to give our city administrator on this, that would be great.
Scott, is this something that we should have a work session on possibly in the next 2 months? If we decide to table this discussion, should we have a work session on it to kind of come up with those parameters or those things that we want to work around?
That sounds like it might be a wise idea, given the discussion here tonight. I'm writing down, but there've been a couple of different suggestions on some things that might even be, there might be some things even kind of branching out from this. So if you're willing, we would be happy to put together, we could do it as an urban renewal agency specifically work session if you'd like to do that.
Perfect. I think that would be a good idea. Is there any further discussion on this before we take a vote? All right, so the motion has been made by Commissioner Bangs and seconded by Commissioner Parker to table this discussion for 2 months, a date to be announced at a later time. And all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All right, so it passes 5-2.
Chair Varwig?
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, I've been waiting for a phone call from family back east. And so they've just called in and I need to step away and call back home real quick. So if you'll please excuse my absence for a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Yep, you bet. You're absolutely go for it.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item is URR 21-003, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency authorizing the agency director to execute a contract with Lee Contractors LLC for the Elm, Grant, and Ivy Street improvements, Quiet Zone, and the Grant Street Arch project. So I know we've had some discussion on this. So Scott, go ahead and give us your report.
Yes, thank you, Chair Varwig. So this is the project more commonly known as the Quiet Zone and Downtown Arch. And so what the action specifically is tonight in front of you is consideration for approving what is the low bid, awarding that low bid in the amount of $791,521 to Lee Contractors for what is now the combined project of both the railway quiet zone improvements that the city would be needing to do at those three intersections, Elm, Grant, and Ivy, as well as the construction and installation of the Grant Street Arch. So the city undertook this going back a couple of years ago and began the design process for both the arch and the railroad quiet zone improvements. And last year we bid this project out as two separate projects essentially. And with that we received one bid only. And that bid came back quite a bit higher than the engineer's estimates at a total project cost with the two projects together of a little over $1.3 million. So with some continued discussion with the Urban Renewal Agency Commission, you decided at some point along the way over the last year to hold off and not award that bid and essentially cancel that particular bid process. And with some further discussion later in 2020, and this was happening just about the time that I had come to work for the city, what was determined was that the URA Commission would then direct the staff to repackage this as a single project, so both components together, sort of rebrand the project, if you will, and do some work within the bid package itself to make it more attractive and to try to find some efficiencies. And we retitled the project the Elm, Grant, and Ivy Street Improvements and Grant Street Arch. So it's the Quiet Zone and Arch project. We felt in working with our engineering team that we could get some better competitive bidding if we bid over this winter and with the repackaging. And so we did so at your direction. And to our delight, it was in fact a good process to go back out. We got much more competitive bidding. We received a total of 8 bids and a low bid that I just announced the amount of that is over $500,000 less than the original bid. So the rebidding was a success. So that is the action that's in front of you. Now, a couple of other things on this. As a reminder, so this is again, would be a singular project. So both items would be together. The city would be doing its improvements on the railroad intersections to do some safety improvements and some street improvements. The railroad, so Union Pacific Railroad, also has their own improvements that they would do and that we would end up paying for. So we have previously entered into an agreement with Union Pacific for this creation of the quiet zone. So the quiet zone is, in essence, what it is it's an agreement with the railroad that allows the city to request that they have that they avoid honking their train horns when they come through those 3 intersections right through our downtown. That doesn't guarantee that they'll never honk their horns. If there are safety issues, like a person on the tracks or a car or some other kind of emergency type of issue, they may still occasionally do so. But it essentially gives them the ability to have enough safety measures in place that they will agree to that. So this agreement that we have with the railroad also has a component where we reimburse them outside of this agreement that you're looking to approve tonight. We would be reimbursing them at a cost of about $411,000 for the improvements that they would make. We also have a good amount of investment already made into engineering and design and other types of work that it was needed to get to this point. And then lastly, the agreement with the railroad is an ongoing agreement wherein we pay an annual fee. It's called the maintenance fee. And it's at about $48,000 a year with some inflators to that cost over time. And that is required if they are to, in fact, have this quiet zone. So if the city, through the URA, wants the quiet zone to be created, we have to do these improvements. We have to go forward with this agreement that we already have with the railroad and continue to work forward on those things. So that's just a little bit more of a snapshot of what the whole project is. But again, what you're specifically being asked for an action item right now is the approval of that low bid at $791,521. And I'm certain that you'll have some questions for us, so I'll be prepared to answer those. I also want to note our interim public works director, Jerry Nelzian, is here with us tonight and will also be available to help me answer your questions that you might have.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I do know that Commissioner Tibbles got disconnected, and I think he's trying to get back on here. So I know he had he's trying to get back on. I know he has some questions about it, but is there anybody else? Councilor Parker, I see your hand raised there.
I was just wondering if you're ready for a motion yet, or whether you wanted to continue with discussion.
I think we should have discussion of the staff report first, because I know a few people had some questions. Vice Chair Hudson.
Thank you, Chair Garwick. Appreciate it. But my one question, and something that, since we are going to be looking at a long-term and ongoing maintenance fee, or I guess that's right, we're looking at a maintenance fee that we have to pay to the railroad for maintaining the new hardware. One of the questions I have is, we have these amazing landmark signs there that run on, they did run on solar, and we took the solar panels down and removed them. Can we, since we're paying some fee each year for this, can we wire those in so that those can be lit up again?
Anything's possible with money. It's just we don't have power on that side of the road.
Okay.
That would be something we need to revisit. It'd be separate from this project.
Okay. I'm not sure if you heard Mr. Nelzian, but we'll have to take a look. It might not be quite as simple as what you just described, but we'll certainly take a look.
Nothing ever is that simple, but I thought I'd ask anyways.
So we need power to run solar, or is that?
No more solar.
No, when the signs went in initially, there were solar panels that were put beside them to help power them. And through a lot of conversation and consternation about the size of the solar panels, they came down. And since then, we've not been able to necessarily light them up in the evening to provide the directional aspect to our downtown off of 99, which was the goal of that. And so
not electrical to get the solar, we just electrical to light those up. Got it. I misunderstood that. All right. Any further discussion? Commissioner Hensley.
I just had a lot of constituents ask questions, and I don't know if you've seen the fodder on Facebook. Not a lot of fans of the arch. I just said I'd ask the question, and pardon the pun, but is the train too far down the tracks to push it back apart and just do the quiet?
Yes, the easy answer is yes. I think what you're talking about is, can we split the project into the two components again? Unfortunately, we cannot without going back out to bid again. So it would require us once again to spend more money on rebidding the package. And the other part of that, I would say, I think a good part of the reason that we got a much better bidding response, both in terms of number of people or number of contractors and better pricing, is because it was guaranteed that it's one project. So the way it was before, each project was separate, and the URA could accept either of those two separately or both together or neither. So the contractors didn't have any certainty in that they were going to have this whole project. And I think they're probably what that led to was a bit more of a challenge of people wanting to bid on the project because of uncertainty. So what you ended up with is with the project being combined is better scales of economy. So a contractor mobilizes, they know they're doing this work in both, on both pieces. So even if we wanted to go back out and do it again, I think then what we would have is it would come in higher than it is now. So there's a risk, a pretty good risk in that. So we cannot split this particular bid because we submitted it this way. And we would have to go back out and
And the right of way.
Thank you.
and the timing of our right-of-way permits might be in jeopardy as well. We've got a certain amount of time to get this done.
Commissioner Tibbles.
So I apologize. I got kicked off. Gotta love technology here on these Zoom meetings. So if I'm asking questions that were already asked, I apologize. You can just go ahead and cut me off. So I do have a few questions though. I guess we'll go where we were just talking about and splitting the potential of splitting. How I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, we did the bidding a year ago, and obviously before my time, but we did it in spring and summer, I believe, and from what I gathered. And I think, is that accurate?
When did we did it last year? Do you guys remember?
I'm trying to remember. It was June.
It was probably in the spring. We don't have the exact date, but yeah, I think it was in the spring of last year.
So I'm also making the assumption that we got a better deal because maybe we were throwing the bid out during maybe not a peak season of contracting versus when we threw the bid out previous, when everyone is, the work is completely booked and it's hard to even find someone to do the job. So
I think that's a good assumption.
Yeah. So I think that there's that piece as well that I would be interested in. I am curious on the RFQ process when we submitted for a bid partnering these two. What was the turnaround time and what is the expected turnaround time if we were to decide to try and get an RFQ for each individual project?
If you were going to reject this bid and then go back out and rebid it, is that so? What is the anticipated timeline of how much time it would take us to do that? Mm-hmm. 6 weeks. Yeah, I would estimate maybe a month and a half to 2 months. Perhaps a little more, but I'm not certain that we'd have to. It depends a little bit on, I guess, what exactly we'd be looking at. Again, I want to emphasize, though, in order to do that, we would have to go back and spend additional money with our engineering firm to repackage the bid, if you will. So just as an advice or an advisory item on that.
Okay. And I don't know, Councilor Vargwig, if you'd rather get other people's input. So if I can go down the list, I was studying this as I've talked to a lot of you throughout the week. So I do have a few questions, so I can, I'm happy to relinquish my time to someone else and come back, or if anyone else has questions.
I haven't seen any hands raised, so go ahead and continue. And if I see some people start raising hands, then I'll slow you down.
Okay, so let's start with the arch. What is the expected maintenance that we would have on the arch project for upkeep?
Basically, like any
Maybe pull your chair up. I have a feeling, Jerry, you're going to be helping me answer a few questions here. Mr. Nalzine is coming up, our Public Works and Project Manager Extraordinaire, to help answer some of these questions.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you guys. Yeah, the maintenance on that, that was a big concern from all of us. The way the powder coating method, the galvanized powder coating, whatever they were doing for the arch was a really high-end quality project that's supposed to hold up. The lighting's LED, and the power is going to be fed off of our downtown power, so we won't have an added fee for any type of electrical on it. So Public Works was happy about that. What we got to figure out is it seems like we got a pretty good idea too for the banner system that's going on it, so that it's easy and fast for putting banners up and down when we get ready to do that.
Okay, thank you. And so that was my only question on the arch. The rest is pertaining to the quiet zone. And like I said, Chair Varwig, feel free to cut me off and allow any other.
The other thing I wanted to add to that too was we bought construction easements for the project that expire in June. So we were lucky that we had them off far enough for the process for rebidding it. So we can still meet that deadline at this point if we move forward with it.
And you would not be able to if
we would just have to go back out, reach out to all the properties and purchase another time frame from them for that.
Okay. Going into the quiet zone, I think I want to start kind of from how does Canby enforce said quiet zone? It seems like the value for our businesses is the horns not being blown and the residential as well. But I also recognize the, my experience, my uncle, who's no longer with us, worked on the road for a long time. He drove trains for a living. And so I'm just wondering, what controls do we have that they won't blow said horn?
I think I'm going to ask for our attorney's help on some of this, because I think that really gets into some of the contractual issues.
Yeah. Well, we don't enforce the honking. The quiet zone, the spirit of a quiet zone, what you're paying for is a zone that the railroad will basically recognize as safe enough that they don't have to honk at the 3 different intersections. They will still honk every single time they come through. At Pine, they refuse to deal with us with Pine because Pine is seen as more dangerous because there has actually been a death there in not that long ago, within about the last decade. We don't have a mechanism to punish or penalize if there's a honk. And mostly what the railroad promises is that they're going to, let people know, let their engineers know that they don't have to honk there at those intersections, but that they can, if they see some sort of emergent situation, like if there's a dog or there's some kids playing on the tracks, or, they see that maybe the gates aren't working. So actually, it's a bit of a, if we start to see behaviors like honking every single time, it's up to us to kind of call in and say, look, we have a quiet zone. Why aren't you recognizing this? We pay kind of this ongoing maintenance fee, and we did all of this work to try to get it done. But it's going to be mostly trying to informally do it. If not, you can always go to court, try to get specific performance. But they are a giant in terms of legally speaking, and their bureaucracy can be huge. So I'm hopeful that our railroad contacts and our just relationship that we've tried to build is enough that we could at least call up and say, look, can somebody please adhere to this quiet zone? Because we kind of try to move heaven and earth to get it done. But there might be instances where there's honking, and I guess the onus would be on us to go out and have some sort of evidence that showed that it wasn't for some other allowable emergent reason, or that it wasn't just happening at Pine all the time. So it can't just be anecdotal. I think we'd actually have to really prove it if we're going to go to court. So the enforcement piece is frankly going to be pretty hard. I hope that answers the question.
Which I think we can all agree that's probably, that's probably putting it nicely. It's impossible to probably prove that unless some of us are going to go out there with video cameras and record all 3 intersections. But it's part of the risk that we take. The other question I have is if we could break down exactly a little bit, just so everyone who's watching at home can understand what goes into this. The issue I have is anytime I see a fee in perpetuity, I want to know what goes into it, why is it there, and is this fixed? Does this have the ability to change based on circumstances down the road, what the fee is?
Okay, so there's an exhibit attached to it. It has to do with the maintenance fee. Because we're paying for them to install these extra devices like the extra flashing lights and the longer whatever you call them, crossing guard, but they maintain them because they're still there. So they install and maintain them. And so it's really up to them to make sure that they're in working order. They wanted that. And so it is an ongoing maintenance for them to come out and inspect them on a regular basis and make sure that they're working, and they know them better than we do. Plus it was basically their ask, if we're going to get a quiet zone, they're going to basically ask whatever they want. And if it's within reason and you guys want to sign up for that, that's kind of part of they're bargaining a bit more from strength because, you know, they're not that keen, frankly, on doing these things and removing certain safety measures. So it's our ask. So they're basically ramming this one down our throats a bit. There is an index that they use on their maintenance that it changes every year. It's the index that they do, I guess, nationally. So it's a number and it just goes up by a year. At the 5-year mark, there is this idea that we can go back and either try to renegotiate. That's in there, in that exhibit that's attached. But I would almost expect them to want to inflate it at that point, but we can always try to argue at that point as well.
And my concern is, I don't think we'll be successful in that, but maybe that's a cynic in me. And if they want to inflate the price on that, then they're more powerful than we are and probably won't stand a chance of winning that argument. So I just didn't know if there was a cap or something that you said there's an index that is a reference to their national standard, and that would be kind of what we could expect for what that inflation would look like. Is that correct?
I believe it's attached to inflation.
Okay. Are there any conditions in this that are laid out that we as a city could not pay said fee? Is there an agreement in any of the language that if this happens, we are exempt, we are ruled out from having to pay this fee?
No, the only language in there that says basically is if we want a quiet zone, we're going to pay for the ongoing maintenance of it. If we don't, I would think implicitly in that language, then you can read into it that they won't adhere to the quiet zone.
What are our current sunk costs into it? I know we have some money already tied up in this project, and if we end up not going forward with this, how much money do we lose that we've already spent?
Okay, so to date, we have the URA commission. So these are, and again, I should have said this earlier, but all of our construction costs and engineering and design, everything that we're doing for this project is an urban renewal project. So it's coming out of urban renewal funds, not the city's general fund. The amount obligated to date on construction, engineering, design, railroad engineering, surveying, right-of-way acquisition, permitting, several other things is $496,000 and some change. So just under $500,000. That's what we've spent to date or obligated to date. That also does not include, I mentioned earlier, there's about $411,000 of railroad improvements that we reimburse them for that we have an agreement already in place on that. And that, I'm not sure what our attorney would say about this, but what our obligation to that would be if we didn't go forward with the project. Obviously, we would ask them to cease on doing anything. But I talked to Mr. Nelzine just a little while ago, and he was actually thinking that they were pretty close to getting ready to do their part of it per our agreement. So about $500,000 completely invested at this point. Another a little over $400,000 that I'm not certain what the status would be if we backed out of this project at this point.
I think if they ordered those for us, I mean, we could probably try to make arguments, but I'm unsure if they would try to push back and say, no, you bought those extra lights and whatever.
There might be some, we might be on the hook for some of those railroad expenses that we've agreed to.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
It did, yeah. Commissioner Hensley, and then Vice Chair Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question. If it has already been asked and answered, I apologize for missing the answer. It's known that the construction costs come from the URA funds, but what about the maintenance fee? Because the urban renewal district is it for perpetuity. So is that coming out of the city budget?
Yeah, legally speaking, we have to get in writing to basically have that go over to the city. When urban renewal agencies and districts shut down, anything that's kind of left it usually reverts back to the city. But with the railroad, we're basically going to have to revert back to the city in writing. And they said it won't be unreasonably withheld, that sort of going back to the city. But yeah, it's if all goes well and we only have a 25-year urban renewal agency, it started in 99, right? And so we're getting pretty close. The ongoing assumption is that it'll revert back to the city and we'll have to own it.
Vice Chair Hudson?
I had a very similar question. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Well, we've had a lot of discussion on that, and that's great discussion. So, Commissioner Parker, earlier you had been ready to make a motion, so are you still prepared to do so?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I move to approve URR 21-003, authorizing the Urban Renewal Agency Director to execute a contract with Lee Contractors, LLC, in the amount of $791,521 for construction of the Elm Grant and Ivy Street improvements, Quiet Zone, and the Grant Street Arch.
Second.
All right. So it has been moved by Commissioner Parker and seconded by Commissioner Spoon to approve URR 21-003, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency authorizing the agency director to execute a contract with Lee Contractors, LLC, for the Elm Grant and Ivy Street improvements, Quiet Zone, and the Grant Street Arch project. All in favor? 6 and opposed? All right, 6-1, that passes. All right.
Point of order question.
Go ahead.
I've noticed that 7 o'clock has rolled around and we're still in the wrong meeting. Is that something that we need to worry about? I'm new enough, so I don't know if I'm supposed to worry about those time things or not.
That's a great question. Normally we get through these a little bit quicker, but Vice Chair Hansen, are we okay? Should we adjourn until later and pick this back up?
So in my understanding, and I'm sure Scott will correct me and will Joe, though we've noticed the city council meeting for 7 o'clock. If we run over, we will take a 5-minute break and then pick up where we'll pick up the meeting then.
Okay, we can start that one late, just not before, right?
It's a not before that time is exactly right. It's your choice.
Perfect. All right, then I think we will power through here because we have one more item and then we're done. So, Commissioner Tibbles.
I was wondering if the chair would grant me the opportunity to explain my vote.
Oh, absolutely.
Being the only no vote.
Sure.
So I was in this was a project that I really did a crash course in learning as much as I can because I realized it's been going on for decades and I didn't want to be the person to come in and, discredit any of the hard work that has been done by everyone in this project. And I value it. And I think that, obviously the majority of the council feels it's a great move and I support them in their vote to do that. My sticking points were a couple things. Every time I hear in perpetuity with lack of ability to enforce, it's hard for me to get on board and signing on with that, as we kind of could see from my questions that I was asking. That is my concern. Also, just with the economic uncertainty of coming out of a pandemic that we haven't experienced, having something that pertaining to the arch, having something that's decorative. While I think it looks great, I think the draft of it and the work that went into it looks awesome, and I'm excited to walk underneath it. I would have liked to see maybe either saving some money for a rainy day, or something that had more functionality, and it could have been with parking or something to that effect. So I applaud everyone for the time they've spent working on this project. I understand the vote. I just wanted to explain my reservations and my no vote.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for doing that. Commissioner Spoon?
Yeah, sorry. Normally we would have had discussion on the motion, but we just went from the motion to the vote. So I just wanted to make sure
I
that.
apologize.
No, it's okay. There was just one comment I was going to make. And since Scott was not here when we've been talking about this for a year, so he hasn't been here for all the conversations. One of the things we talked about when the initial design of the arch was presented to council was I requested, and I'm hoping this is still a possibility, so I don't want it to get lost if it's possible, that inside the arch, we work with the Heritage and Landmark Commission to put a time capsule in there. And at the time, they thought it was really possible because we were going to put plaques on the base of the arch. And so I just wanted to throw that out there and hope if it's possible, it doesn't get lost in change in management of the city.
So it sounds like we already are planning towards that. There's already a time capsule that we own. And so it sounds like we're on track for that, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie.
Very
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Well, if there's nothing further, we'll move on to URR 21-004, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency extending the 60-month timeline of the DDA with Canby Civic Blocks LLC.
Thank you, Chair. I think this can be, given your time issue here, I think this can be fairly quick. This is simply a request to extend our current DDA development and disposition agreement with Canby Civic Block, which I think most of you know as that's Mary Hanlon and her company. So we have in place right now with the Urban Renewal Agency a 5-year agreement for the development of that block over time. Both the existing and the former buildings, the Dahlia building that's been constructed, and the ongoing efforts there to complete the rest of the Civic Block with the old Canby utility building is about ready to open as a daycare, and then the rest of the vision for that site with the other 2 former city buildings. So that agreement goes through December of this year. That would be the 5 years. December of 21, this coming year, the December ahead. There is a clause in the agreement that has to do with force majeure, which is essentially anything that causes unavoidable delays. And it specifically mentions, which is interesting because this was written obviously over 4 years ago, pandemics, epidemics, quarantine restrictions, fires, other acts of God. So we've had some of those, obviously, this last year between the COVID pandemic, and we had the fires locally. And these things can slow down development and hinder, the opportunities to do that. So Ms. Hanlon requested formally to us a 15-month extension of the agreement, which the request for 15 months has to do with essentially what is kind of the anticipated period of time that the pandemic has been prior and will probably still be ahead of us for a little bit longer. So essentially that is the ask, is that you approve this extension of 15 months to the existing DDA, and staff is supportive of that and is recommending that. I believe that Mary Hanlon has signed up to speak on this to you as well as the other party in the partnership. So if you want to have her speak at some point before you make your vote.
Yeah, I think if she is asked to speak and is still wanting to do so, I think that we owe her that respect to let her do so.
Hi, I haven't met the 2 new council members yet, and I look forward to doing that and would be happy to meet with you whenever we can. And I just wanted to say that we really appreciate Scott's effort to reach out on this issue. We've been working diligently, but as you can imagine, leasing has been affected by the COVID. And so that's the nature of the request. And most importantly, we're just pleased to be working with Scott on the civic block effort. That's about all I have to say. I'm here if you have any questions for us specifically.
Very good. Thanks so much, Mary. I know you guys have been working tirelessly over there to get places in there, and you've done a fantastic job. I really enjoy some of those places that you have over there. So
Thank you, Sean.
does anybody have any questions? Commissioner Hensley?
Now I'm prepared to make a motion if you're ready to take one.
Let me see if there's any hands for any questions real quick. I'm not seeing any, so go ahead and make your motion.
I move to approve URR 21-004, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency extending the 60-month timeline of the DDA with Canby Civic Block LLC.
I second that, please.
All right, so that was, the motion has been made by Commissioner Hensley and seconded by Commissioner Parker. Any further discussion? Commissioner Parker, or Commissioner Vice Chair Hodson, I'm sorry, you had your hand up first.
It's okay. Thank you. I do hope that we take a look at this, and I don't see a reason why we wouldn't extend this piece to Hanlon LLC on this regarding the Canby Civic Blocks. This has been a tremendous partnership for us as a city. We've seen tremendous success even in the year that we've had of a pandemic. And I think that extending this out for the developer makes sense. And I think it gives us an opportunity to continue to do the great work that we've been doing with the Hanlon Group on creating a downtown with some vibrancy and some energy. And so I will definitely be voting for this, and I hope the rest of you will as well.
Thank you. Yeah, their commitment to our downtown does not go unnoticed for sure. Commissioner Parker.
Well, same as what the mayor just said, that Mary has played a crucial role in the redevelopment of our downtown. And who would have guessed that she would actually have to utilize a mention of a pandemic in the legal language. So thank you, Mary, for everything that you've done and your support and belief in us. And I certainly think this is the least we can do to give you this extension. So.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All right. The motion has been made and has been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes 7-0. All right. Well, that does it for new business. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. It's moved by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Commissioner Spoon. All those in favor? We are adjourned. See you all in about 3 or 4 minutes. 5 minutes.
Same link.
5 minutes.